Welcome to Beating Cancer Daily. Beating stage 4 cancer for 30 years still takes my breath away every time I say it. I'm Saranne, founder of the Comedy Cures Foundation, and I hope you'll join me for just a few minutes daily for the next 365 days so we may laugh, learn, maybe cry a little as we live our best days beating cancer daily together. Jacqui and I were just talking about vices. And if somebody said, Saranne, what are your 2 vices? I would say sleep hygiene and emotional eating. And we talk a lot about sleep hygiene, but we don't really talk about emotional eating. And I can't think of a more emotional time in my life than when I was misdiagnosed with cancer, then diagnosed with cancer, and then had to go through all the treatment and then survivorship. So now, all these decades later, after going through all that stage 4 treatment, I am very aware of when I emotionally eat. I love to eat late at night, which Jacqui talks about all the time, don't do. And I love to eat when I'm driving long distances in a car. What I've graduated to is healthy snacks. So I'll do carrot sticks, I'll do green beans, things that are way better than that bag of potato chips or chocolate cake. Jacqui's laughing at me. But there is one place in New York that has such good chocolate cake slices. So the sugar and the gluten-free lifestyle go out the window, and I just grab that piece of chocolate cake and I emotionally eat that chocolate cake. But it's very rare now. So if you're struggling with this or you don't even realize that you're emotionally eating, this is really a good episode to listen to because my good friend and our functional medicine expert, certified nutrition specialist, certified health coach, whole health educator, RN, Jacqui Bryan is back. My girlfriend's back, and she's going to help us through this topic. You might not even realize, like me, that you're doing it. So welcome, Jacqui.
Well, that was quite an introduction and a story. I just have this vision of you after a hard day in the closet with a Twinkie.
No, I have to get this really good piece of chocolate cake. It starts with a meatball. I don't know why when I have a really hard day and I'm in New York City, and I don't care what time of night it is, I grab this meatball and then I grab me some chocolate cake and I feel so good eating it. And then on the way home, I'm like, why did I just do that? That is so bad for me. Jacqui, I hear you in my head. It's not often. It's when it's a really stressful day.
It's funny because people have different definitions of what emotional eating is. And I like to put it into storyline. So if you've had a terrible day at work and you come home and you're reaching for this crinkly bag of snacks, or maybe you start digging into a carton of ice cream after you broke up with your boyfriend, or you've got financial issues, or you're just overscheduled like we were this month, Sarah. And it was a very busy Breast Cancer Awareness Month is so crazy busy for Sarah and I.
I was just going to say, Jacqui, when you put that list out, that was everything going on in my life, except it was my husband when I thought I had cancer and they didn't see it. That whole list of
Oh,
emotional
well,
wreckage, that was emotional wreckage, but I actually gained 10 pounds. I'm naturally a thin person. But when all that was happening, I ballooned 10 pounds up. And that's when I realized I have a problem. I'm eating my emotions.
that's exactly what it is. Emotional eating is one of the most common ways that we cope with our feelings without actually dealing with them. And I like to say that one of the main causes of emotional eating is procrastination. And it's not procrastination in doing a project, it's procrastination in dealing with your feelings because to actually sit with your feelings, it's not only difficult, but it can be really scary as well.
But we're not taught how to do that. In this society, we're taught to really just take a pill. Don't feel.
Well, yeah, I have this cute comic, and actually, boy, it would have been great for you and I today to be able to show this, but it's this little child that falls and hurts their knee, and the grandmother hands them a cookie, and the child puts the cookie on the knee.
Oh, that is cute. That's a great visual.
The child doesn't understand because we train our children to emotionally eat. If something hurts, we get a cookie. If we're sad or bored, we grab a piece of cake, right? We are learning and connecting things that aren't supposed to be connected. So, for example, if you are someone that is exhausted, like you haven't slept for the night, we will often reach for food, right? Because we're like, oh, I'm tired, I'm stressed, I'm going to grab food. What should we be doing?
What I love, Jackie, is that you just described after I have a long drive what I do. I love the comfort of sitting down and eating late at night.
But you're actually getting something from that, Sarah. I think that's what's really important to understand. And the point of saying that we're connecting to unrelated things, if you're tired, we should be sleeping. If you're stressed out or procrastinating, dealing with an emotion, we need to sit and deal with the emotion and not put the band aid on it or just try to blur it out by eating. And what's interesting when I say you're trying to do something good for yourself, when you're eating that high fat, high sugar food, you actually are trying to do something good for yourself. It's certainly not helping your health, but what's happening is you're boosting neurochemicals. And you and I have talked a lot about brain chemicals. When you're eating that sugary, sweet carbohydrate, whatever that treat that you've gone for, you're actually boosting dopamine. You're popping some endorphins. You're actually releasing some serotonin. And these feel good. And we get into this habit. We get into the habit of reaching for the sugary stuff because we want the high, the high of those neurochemicals.
So you're really just trying to dig yourself out of the ditch. You're just doing it with packaged foods.
Exactly. So I'm actually trying to let you off the hook, right? I'm trying to say, bravo, you're trying to do something good for yourself, but it's not working. It's not helping your health. So let's find another way that we can curb our emotions without food, right? That would be the first step.
I would say you could do that by laughing.
Completely.
Yeah, that's why I often come home and I grab. It's healthy though. I've graduated to healthy food, except for that one time in New York. I get a healthy snack, I get some fruit or some nut butter, and then I watch comedy. And that's how I boost that stuff, whether it's late at night or during the middle of the day. So I've trained myself, thanks to the Comedy Cures Foundation, I've trained myself to really use laughter for that boost instead of things that might hurt my body.
I love that. Yeah, because the neurochemical boost that you're getting from laughter is very similar, right? And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to help you find a solution that's not going to be detrimental to your health because we know that when we are experiencing stress, and we all do, that we need to find different ways to cope with our stress, but also nurture a positive relationship with food because what happens is we get afraid of the food. Have you ever I know this sounds weird, but have you ever been in the other room and somebody brought over like a special treat of cookies or something, and you're sitting in the other room and you're like, why are those cookies calling my name? Like, why am I hearing the cookies eat me?
That's Mark. Honestly, I can have a bag of cookies, but I pick a healthiest brand possible. I can have that in the closet and I can just go have one. If he knows they're in the house, he will eat the whole bag or he'll leave me like one just in the box, like just as. So I'm not pissed if I go in the box and there's no cookies there. But yeah, it's interesting how he doesn't have that stop valve.
That's funny. My husband's the same way. It's
Oh, yeah, I
funny.
didn't know that.
He'll come in and he'll literally will say, maybe toss it at me and say, don't bring these in the house again. Or don't, these should never be allowed, or don't allow those in the house. We had this friend, I hope they don't listen, podcast, but they would bring us this homemade Christmas toffee. She called it Christmas crack. And it was no, it was insane. And she would for the first few years, we just waited for it. We were like, "Oh, it's coming. She's bringing it soon." And then now we're like, "Oh my, lock the door. Don't let her in. Don't let her bring this stuff," because it was too addicting. It was too like the two of us would be like, "Oh, please don't bring it anymore." And finally I said to her, I said, "Come over and let's have a fruit cup." Let's do something other than the Christmas crack because we can't, and this is terrible, but it was so good that it was so difficult to resist. And, what's interesting about emotional eating is some of us will crave specific comfort foods, and it might be different, right? Like you were saying, you're fine with stopping with cookies, right? And other people crave salty, or salty sweet combos. It's different for different people, right? And partly because these types of foods stimulate the pleasure center in our brain, and it temporarily suppresses our feelings of sadness or stress or boredom or whatever we're actually dealing with. And that's what I think is really interesting, right? Is that the reason we get hooked on food, and obviously you can't abstain from food. It's not like alcohol or smoking where we can say, "Oh, I'm giving that up." Right?
Well, you gave up that toffee, but what I was gonna say, you gave up toffee crack. What I was gonna say is that you taught us on a much earlier episode, go for a piece of fruit first. And I
Yes.
watched that give me the ability to totally reduce the amount of sweets that I eat that are not fruit based. Just having that
Right.
piece of fruit cuts that down so much, Jacqui.
It's true. I always think that sometimes we confuse physical hunger with emotional hunger. And I like to think of physical hunger as something that gradually builds, and it can be satisfied with a variety of foods like an apple or some nuts. And so emotional hunger feels like an emergency to me. Like when I have it, it's like, I have to have it. That cookie from the other room or that cinnamon bun. I will tell you, like, when you think about the manufacturers that do like cinnamon buns and things like that, it's a big conspiracy theory. That's all I say is that they are piping that scent out into the hallway or outside so that when you walk by, it's like a hook, the hook that just grabs you and pulls you right in. And it's difficult to resist because sometimes emotional hunger, you're a little bit stressed and all of a sudden you get a whiff of something and that actually starts getting the neurochemicals flowing and you feel that sense of urgency. And it can be tied to specific situations that will lead you to mindlessly eat. We have to be honest here. Eating is fun, right? A lot of us really enjoy eating. We don't always mindfully eat. And we're going to talk a little bit about that in this podcast of strategies to eat more mindfully or intuitively. And I think that's what's really important to understand is that if you are somebody that has gotten into the habit of emotional eating, it doesn't mean it has to stay that way. You're somebody that has broken the cycle by just bringing in healthier versions of food.
I think also a recommendation that you said on the podcast about fat, fiber, and protein
Protein.
with the sweet. Don't have that sugar spike happen. So I will have some nuts with the apple, right? And then have some nut butter, seed butter, and then have the dessert. And so I don't feel the spike. I still enjoy, I eat way less of, say, the sweet thing. But I just need not need, I like, that's a really cool correction that I just said on myself. But I like a little piece of dark chocolate or something after a meal. It just punctuates it for me. And that is the emotional piece because my father was such a dessertaholic. And so we were allowed to have dessert first, which think about that sugar spike. But then I feel connected to him. And now I realize that having that little piece of chocolate is like having a meal with my dad, even though he's passed on.
Yeah.
At least I'm aware of where that emotional eating is coming from right now.
Yes, you nailed it, Saran, by talking about food is not only fun, but we have a lot of memories associated with food. It's cultural. There's so many different components to eating. And the challenge is to find balance. You found balance by having a piece of chocolate at the end of a meal, right? But if we look, let's take one giant step back and just look physiologically what's actually happening inside the body. When we get stressed or anxious, or even stress is also defined by not sleeping for a night. So the way our body responds to stress is to release cortisol, which is a hormone that increases your appetite and cravings. And it's looking for quick energy. It's looking for calorie dense foods. And these can also impair digestion, just to, as a little bit of a side note, because we know how important gut health is. But these foods actually activate those neurochemicals like dopamine. These are the feel good neurotransmitters. They offer comfort and relief, which is why I brought it back to the fact that, hey, when you're doing that, you're trying to do something to take care of yourself. You're readily boosting your brain chemicals that are going to make you feel better. But over time, coping with food trains your brain to associate eating with emotional relief. And that becomes a feedback loop that's hard to stop. It's a roller coaster ride that's difficult to get off of. And I like to just phrase this way is that stress eating isn't about having a lack of willpower. So if you've been beating yourself up saying, oh, I'm so weak, it is a biological and emotional response. And when you're struggling emotionally, your self-regulation isn't as strong as it normally is. That's where you have to give yourself a little bit of a break, right? If you're struggling emotionally, I just got a cancer diagnosis, or I have a loved one who has a cancer diagnosis. Yes, these are emotional things, and that self-regulation, that stop button is not working. And we talked about procrastination, dealing with those feelings as one of the biggest things that can lead to emotional eating. And so I don't want you to think about you being weak or as a failure. I actually would love you to learn to try to sit with your feelings, maybe work with a therapist or a specialist in that field to help you cope with them in healthier ways. Because when you are jamming the food down your throat, I'm just giving the visual, how much joy is in that experience, right? So if I'm going to eat something decadent and yummy, it is going to be a complete romantic experience. I want it to feel yummy. I want it to be delicious. I'm going to guess, Saran, that when you have that chocolate at the end of your dinner, that you're savoring it.
Oh, it is. It is once in a blue moon, but I love every bite. It's actually too rich to finish. I just eat a piece of it, but part of it. But I just wanted to say, I wish that I had this information decades ago when I was going through this because nobody tied it together. There were referrals to support groups, but nobody talked about the food component, how we use the food for comfort. And there was a time where I was just being pumped with so many steroids, and all I wanted to do was eat from the steroids. But no one really ties together the diagnosis with the stress level with the food choices. And that is important.
Yeah, we're connecting the dots. I think it's also important to note that emotional eating can be more common in people with disordered eating patterns, right? So again, it's important to understand where you fall on that continuum, right? If you are someone that you're binge eating or have or you're vomiting your food or any of those are things that you 100% need to seek out support for. That's very important. We're talking about something much lighter, less severe than that. These tendencies, the emotional eating creates this kind of learned pattern where you're learning to grab food to deal with emotions. And we want to try to reverse that. We want to deal with these emotions so that not only we have a healthy response to those feelings, but we also have a healthy relationship with food. And I will say that in today's 24/7 food availability with all the ultra processed foods and the snacks and the sugary beverages and all of those, it's addictive, right? It is a challenge to avoid these types of food. And so this is one of the reasons that I wanted to talk about this today, because I don't know of anybody that is immune to this. There are some people that they say they don't emotionally eat at all, but when they get tired, they might grab a cookie, but just to boost them up, right? There's different levels of this. And so I think the first step to addressing emotional eating is just to at first to acknowledge it. You and I have made a joke, about it. Like we've said, oh, when we're this, we're that, the other thing. We play tricks on our mind, right? So I think about, I used to eat at night. Like I would wake up at 3 a.m, and this was stress. This was during cancer treatment. And I would go down to the kitchen, right? Because if nobody's looking, the calories don't count. I just It's 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'd walk down the stairs, and I'd open the fridge, and I stand there, and I would just be looking at in the fridge, and I'm just standing there, right? Now, I had no idea what I was looking for, but it was going to come to me at some point. But I think there's this, you know, this thought that it's a dirty habit, right? Eating in secret, secretive eating and all of that. You can get into more disordered eating patterns with that. That's not what we're talking about today. I was under a lot of stress. I was on a ton of steroids when I was in chemotherapy. And I was waking up in the middle of the night and I was making cookies and I was eating and I was so sick from chemo, I didn't gain any weight from it. But I did know that I was trying to deal with my emotions, but I was so terrified. I was so afraid. And sometimes sitting with those feelings of fear was almost impossible at that point. And then I did get a chance to talk to somebody, and those 3 a.m. dates that I had with the refrigerator stopped because I was actually able to cope with my emotions in a better way.
That's why I think this podcast, Beating Cancer Daily, is so important in the life cycle of somebody going through treatment, because it's a way to check in every day on pain points, on ideas that it took me decades to learn, and Jacqui, you decades, even as a medical professional. And so, what I really try to do here is start conversations so that it doesn't take you 10 years to find your new normal. And this conversation is so important, Jacqui, because disordered eating, which is in the extreme, anorexia, bulimia, that's at a whole nother level. That may be a complication that you're experiencing also. But just talking about how stressful getting the cancer diagnosis is, how stressful it is on your family, how stressful it is on your finances, and then tying it back to, okay, is my eating really serving me? Am I eating for my immune health? Am I eating for my mental health? And bringing this all together, Jacqui, thank you so much.
Let's dive into how to stop stress eating, right? And again, we want to be very mindful of the fact that if you're struggling with binge eating or vomiting, things like that, you need to seek out professional health. But for those of you that are using food to cope with emotions, let's go through some steps. One of the first things I like to do is pause before you eat. And think about it, how many times do you actually pause? You sit there, you look at your food, you maybe sniff it a little bit to activate that cephalic phase of digestion. I think if you get this urge to snack or eat a meal, take a moment and ask yourself, am I physically hungry or am I feeling something like stress, boredom, or fatigue? This short pause helps you avoid emotionally eating and reconnect with your body's signals. If you can find a way to reconnect with your body's signals, then that is going to be something that you can use in any type of situation. I really like to keep a food journal and even a mood journal. I call it a food mood journal. And then you track what you eat and when you eat and how you feel at the time. Do it for a week. And that's where you'll start to see patterns where, like Saranne, you gave the example of coming home from work and being tired and sitting on the couch and wanting to grab some snack, right? When those patterns emerge, it reveals the triggers or times of day that you're more vulnerable to emotional eating.
I love this idea of a short journal period. I think if someone said to me, you have to do this for the rest of your life, I would be so frustrated. That's like another thing I have to do. But setting a time limit of a week, that I think is doable, Jacqui.
Yeah, just learning about yourself, right? This is a little bit of a self evaluation. I also want to remember to mention we need to build balanced meals, right? So when you're eating regular meals that include protein, fiber, and healthy fats, that's going to help stabilize your sugar. It's going to make you less vulnerable, which means you'll be less likely to crave those sugary, high fat comfort foods. And one of the things that I like to do is create a non food coping toolbox. And I have this therapy clay that when we're watching TV, I make all sorts of really ugly clay models. I'll make a snake or I'll make a bowl and I'm fiddling with it. And it's a little activity that I do because boy, is it fun to munch on things when you're watching TV, right? But make your own list of go to activities that might help you unwind. Walk outside, breath work, stretching, journaling, call a friend, even just sitting and thinking about the fact that I want to be more mindful. If you practice being more mindful, eliminating a lot of distractions. How many times do you sit at the table and the TV's not on, the radio's not on, the phone isn't within reach? I think it's interesting because my youngest, Maddie, she has this thing with her friends where they actually throw their phone in the center of the table and no one's allowed to look at it, right? I don't know how long it lasts for, but that distracted eating can actually lead to more emotional eating, right? So we want to find ways to be more mindful. And that includes intentionally slowing down. And I think that's really helpful.
I want to bring back what I said earlier, which is consciously watching comedy, listening to comedy. If you're starting to feel the stress mount, that's why I started the Comedy Cares Foundation is like my number one go-to strategy. But also, Jacqui, you've mentioned before box breathing, different breathing techniques for sure. And we have the 24-hour laugh line. It's 1-888-HA. And if you press one, there's a pro comic. If you press two, it's like an amateur joke or a laugh. And if you press three, you can tell us a joke. So you can weave that into the fabric of your stress management. If you can't call us because you're somewhere where you can't get into a toll-free number in America, then you can actually go to the Comedy Cares website and we have comedy clips and laughter and amateur joke tellers, different ways where you can actually take that break and have some comedic relief. We have all the tumor humor memes on the tumor humor section where there's 31 days about comedy and cancer. You can send those to people or just read one a day, however you want to use that. But I love the comedy element and the laughing element. And the other thing I wanted to add, Jacqui, is you have that great label detective episode that we did, and there's so many nutritional episodes. So if you're looking for a way to get healthier snacks and just boost your immune eating instead of stress eating, Jacqui has over 100 episodes that you can pop on and just start learning.
Yeah, those are great points too. I love laughter because when you're laughing, you're actually only able to focus on that one feeling, right? So a lot of other stuff gets tucked away a little bit, which is wonderful. And then refocusing your food consumption as something that's going to fuel your body, something that's going to support your immune system. I love that. I do think it's important that we don't ban comfort foods because when we ban them, then they become even more attractive. I don't know, we're all little rebels at heart, but putting foods on a ban list can increase the emotional power that they have over you. And
It's like the naughty guy that we dated when we were young.
no, the bad boy
The
with the
bad boy.
motorcycle.
Yeah, it was our bad boy phase where he became super focused on because we banned him.
Yeah. I mean, enjoying the comfort foods occasionally is fine. Making sure you're getting enough rest, Saranne.
I'm working on it, Jacqui. Last night was a disaster, but I'm working on it.
Yeah, fatigue can make you more impulsive and it can increase your cravings. The recommended amount of sleep is 7 to 9 hours if possible. I actually have this little thing that I say to people: stop, drop, and roll if you feel like you're going to emotionally eat. And I know we talk about that in fires, but if we say stop, drop, and roll to ourselves when we're about to emotionally eat, it's really meaning ask yourself, am I hungry? If the answer is no, stop the behavior, get away from the food, and assess what you really need. Do you need a hug? Do you need time talking to a friend? The hardest part is stopping, right? So once you start, if you take 2 bites of something and you pause and you stop, go over to your stove and set a timer for 20 minutes. And during that 20 minutes, you promise yourself not to eat and do something else besides that. It could be stretching or deep breathing. And the time of that 20 minutes gives you the opportunity to let that urge dissipate, right? It makes things slow down. So I think it's important that if you do feel like you're slipping up a little bit with emotional eating, don't catastrophize it. A slip is not necessarily a slide. And I actually talk about this in my blog on my website. When you are feeling like you're starting to emotionally eat, draw the line, switch gears, do something different, acknowledge that you slipped, say it's okay, forgive yourself. There is not one perfect person on the planet, right? Nobody is perfect. We need to get right back on track with our healthy eating plan, and that will help us feel more in control, especially if we're in cancer treatment. I always remind myself, you're human, right? Everyone slips off course sometime, and going and choosing healthier options like Saranne does, when she's feeling a little bit stressed. My go-to when I'm stressed is pumpkin seeds because they're rich in magnesium. And again, I don't think we've done one podcast out of the 100 where I haven't mentioned pumpkin seeds.
Everybody talks about that, Jacqui. Whenever they reach out to me, they're always like, Jacqui's so obsessed with pumpkin seeds. And I love how much she loves pumpkin seeds. So I bought pumpkin seeds.
I think it's important, but you find what works for you, right? It could be a banana, it could be dark chocolate. There's different types of foods that can support your body when you're under stress. As we close out this podcast, I just want to remind individuals that if your emotional eating feels out of control, it's really disrupting your life, it's impacting you physically, mentally. I think reaching out to get help is super important. There are different groups that are trained in mindful and intuitive eating that can definitely help you. I work with individuals on intuitive eating, but if someone's struggling with a true eating disorder, I think that they really need an expert in that field. But I encourage you to move forward mindfully, right? In a way that is right for you. Be patient with yourself. And even what Saranne talked about, where she made the transition from junk food to eating healthier food in response to that. That's actually what I do, right? I will grab, if I know I need to have something, maybe I'm not starving, I grab a handful of pumpkin seeds and it satisfies me. But getting back in tune with yourself is really the most important thing that you can do. And I think this was a great topic today.
Yeah, I loved it. We did a health builder called Foods and Moods, but this really drills down into the stress aspect. And I really love that. If you haven't signed up and come to our free webinars that we do probably about 9 times a year, it's almost every month. Jacqui comes on Zoom for free and we do a 45-minute session. And then you can ask her questions after live. And we have such a lovely community that joins us. So if you want more Jacqui, there are a couple ways to get her. You can join us for Health Builder and just go to comedycures.org, scroll a little down, and there's a link to sign up for free and join us at Health Builder. And then Jacqui also has an incredible website, jacquibryan.com. If you can't find her website, come back to me at comedycures.org and either leave a message for me in the podcast section, record, or go to the menu and just write a note to me, and I will make sure you have Jacqui's signature. Jacqui, there's so much humor about stress eating, and I just thought this one was super cute. And everybody knows I love dark chocolate, but I'm very conscious about the amount of sugar in the chocolate that I eat and that it's organic. And so I saw this cute one. And so when life gives you lemons, trade them for chocolate and never look back.
It's cute. That is cute.
And that's a play on when life gives you lemons, make lemonade. And I just thought I like lemonade a lot, but I really like chocolate. Thank you, Jacqui Bryan. We love you here at Beating Cancer Daily.
Thank you, Saranne. This was a great podcast. Thanks for having me.
Yes, and Jacqui, I think you are one of the reasons why we're in 138 countries helping people right now. And we have been nominated as top health series of the year for the People's Choice Podcast Awards. And that's because so many of you voted and told the world that this podcast matters and that having a 7-day-a-week podcast is something that's really serving our community. So thank all of you for believing in Beating Cancer Daily and supporting us. Have a blessed day, and I'll see you tomorrow. If you loved today's episode, then tell the world. Why? Because Beating Cancer Daily is a listener and donor supported experience. So the more people you tell and the more people that join us, the more robust and interesting programs our nonprofit, the Comedy Cures Foundation, can bring to you throughout the year. So if you have some extra change, I'd love you to go to comedycures.org and make a donation today of whatever level is comfortable for you. And it will be tax deductible to the extent allowed by law, because Comedy Cures is a nonprofit 501c3 organization founded from my chemo chair, April 1999, and we've been going strong ever since. So please consider making a donation today and help our community and this podcast thrive. Guess what time it is? It's time for me to read the disclaimer. Beating Cancer Daily and the membership circle are not in lieu of medical advice or treatment. They are for entertainment purposes only. Please consult your healthcare team to review your best strategy. Thanks for listening. See you guys tomorrow.